Together and you.
No.
I lose track. I do follow what goes on in the town, so I should have. I did know, I just forgot.
I'd like to call to order the September 14th, 2021 Board of Education meeting.
And I will ask trustee Crossley to lead us in the pledge. Allegiance.
States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so our next item was a student performance. Our student is unfortunately not able to make it. Would have had a great start to our meeting. We were going to have an equally great start to our meeting with our Osley Matters update.
All right, talking here.
Yes.
Okay. Good evening to the board, Dr. Sanchez, teachers and parents. Thank you for allowing me to speak about the grants Ossining Matters was able to fund for the 2021-22 school year. I am Karina Gratz, the president of Ossining Matters, and I'm a parent of a junior at Ossining High School. I'd like to start by saying that I'm proud of our board for the fundraising, dedication, and time that they have given, along with the support from the community, parents, and teachers during the past year and a half. Despite the many obstacles we faced during the pandemic, we were pleased that we were able to fund the following grants presented to us by the Ossining teachers. The first grant was for the Mudagrees Comfort Dogs to promote social emotional learning. This was sent to us by Dr. Brandon Beck, who is an amazing teacher, by the way, for Roosevelt School. We were able to fund $4,000 towards this program. This is the third year that we were able to fund this very important program. The second grant we funded was for Claremont School's multicultural mural for English language learners. This was sent to us by Christina Angeles, Melinda Irizarry, and Carolina Rodriguez, all E&L language learners, teachers. We were able to fund $4,868.60, and the project will be done in partnership with Ron Whitehead and Ossining art students. I can't wait to see when this project is completed. The third and last grant was for a book vending machine at Claremont. The innovative grant was submitted by Aaron Mace, Mickey Lockwood, and Teresa Rossini. We were able to fund $6,000, the largest of the grants, to purchase a vending machine, books, and tokens. I just may need to go back to third grade to take a look at it. For this school year, we have many events planned and hope that you will consider donating, sponsoring, and volunteering either on our board or at our events. This will enable us to raise more funds that will support and enrich learning opportunities for all of our district's children. Just a note, our second annual Movie by Moonlight will be on Saturday, October 16th. Tickets will be going on sale this week, and we hope that you will join us for this fun evening. You can visit our website, like us on Facebook, or follow us on Instagram for more information. Thank you.
Any comments? No.
Congratulations on all the hard work. It's been a tough 18 months, 19 months, and to still be able to raise money and to put through these programs is is amazing. And thank you for your leadership and for all the volunteers that work so hard. This is an important part of our children's programs. And just thank you for all your hard work and for everybody in Ossining Matters. Well done.
I remember the first year that companion dog was initiated, and I'm glad to see 3 years later it's still going strong. And all of the volunteers and the support behind Ossining Matters to bring efforts like that to the school district are always appreciated. So thank you to everybody involved in that process.
Okay, so I also just want to thank Ossining Matters for the proposals that you're able to fund this year. Obviously, last year was a very challenging time, but yet some really creative ideas are able to be supported. And I'm confident that they're going to really enrich the lives of our scholars here in the Ossining School District. And I would say just beyond that, I also want to thank, the volunteers on the board for all their efforts, but also our entire community, because the money raised comes from our community. And it speaks volumes to the support that they provide. And what we've noticed too is that some of these the seed that sometimes you plant becomes part of our system thereafter. So I'm just sincerely thankful for the support that you provide our staff. And it really does help to enrich the lives of our scholars here. And at the same time, look forward to future support and future activities that take place and are coordinated by Ossining Matters. So thank you so much, and you deserve a round of applause from us. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to take a motion to move up item 6.1. 6.1, resolution regarding professional tenure appointments. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Okay. So I am very, very excited to share that we have 4 individuals receiving tenure tonight. I think some of them are with us here this evening. I'm going to share their names and in advance, obviously congratulate them on the dedication and their service, and look forward to many more years of service here in the Ossining School District and seeing the outstanding efforts that they've put forth on behalf of our students. So we have Elizabeth Bushell. Arlene Alou. Allison Whiting. And I hope she hears us. She's at back to school night at Park, but Raquel Plentner, excuse me. So I know we have a few of our district leaders that would like to say something on behalf of our tenure recipients. So I'm going to ask Bradley Morrison to come up and share a few words about Elizabeth. If Elizabeth isn't here, right?
Hello, everyone. Elizabeth's here. You should
Oh,
come.
okay. Come on up,
Yeah,
Elizabeth.
come on up.
There we go.
Elizabeth came to us with a really interesting background for an art teacher, because a lot of experience with special ed and some other content areas as well. And so right from the start was just an exceptional educator. Really excited to have her with us. During our COVID experience and virtual learning and stuff, it was amazing. We actually, I had the privilege of watching one of Elizabeth's classes where Elizabeth was able to integrate so much of what we're looking for as far as social emotional learning with our students, where she really checked in with every single kid in that class, whether they were sitting there in front of her physically, at home on the computer, and then engaged them all in really beautiful art making, which if you've ever tried to engage in an arts class at all through a computer screen is really just impossible. And so that just shows the real dedication that Elizabeth has had to our schools and to our students. And I'm just so proud and happy to have her here with us and to have her receive tenure this evening.
And I'm going to invite Kate Matthews to share a few words about Arlene.
And congratulations to Elizabeth, who is here. So Arlene, come on here. I'm sure you love the spotlight. So I'm very, very honored to congratulate Arlene on her tenure. Arlene is a world language teacher. She's a Spanish teacher in the Anna Dorr Middle School, and she is a phenomenal teacher. So when she began here, she started with our 2A and 2B. These are our dual language students that then take higher level Spanish in 7th and 8th grade. And she worked really collaboratively with our ELA teachers to align the Spanish 2A and 2A curriculum with our Teachers College curriculum, which was a lot of work and very, very unusual, an unusual way of approaching the language, very different from most of our neighboring districts, but really, really impressive work. So that is just so spectacular. She has high expectations. She is a wonderful role model for all of her students, and she worked really, really hard on behalf of all of her students. So I'm just so happy that you are still here at AMD and that you will continue to be here in the Ossining School District. Your students are lucky to have you, and so am I. Congrats.
And being able to work with the students. It's amazing to be here. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And now I'm going to ask Kim Mauricio to say a few words about Allison. Come on up, Allison.
I'm actually going to ask Maureen to join us too, because Maureen has also supervised her for many years, and Maureen is in the audience.
I don't live here anymore.
But we're still inviting her because she's still part of the family. So Allison is a psychologist with a behavioral background and services our students district-wide. On behalf of the Special Education Department, I am thrilled to have Allison as part of our team. She is knowledgeable, hardworking, dedicated, and always child-focused. Allison supports our students with different abilities to ensure their success on a daily basis, to make sure that they are meeting their goals and working with their teachers side by side. Colleagues describe her as hardworking, a team player, and collaborative. Ossining is very lucky to have you. You are an advocate for all children. Thank you, Allison, for being part of the Ossining family and all you do on behalf of children and our families. Congratulations on your well-deserved tenure.
So Raquel is not here, but I do want to share a few words. I know Raquel as an outstanding Park School teacher, early childhood. She actually started with us as an intern and then has progressed to take on obviously a teaching role, bilingual, so able to provide services to our students in both English and Spanish, and extremely talented beyond just her teaching ability, but I've seen her in terms of her art and others that contribute to our entire school, and want to thank her in advance and congratulate her for her tenure. So please join me once again in giving her a round of applause. And I'm just going to ask the Board of Education and all of the in attendance to please join me in a standing ovation for those that are getting tenure here tonight.
Thank you very much. All our tenured attendees know they have to stay till the end of the meeting. Is that, you're free to leave whenever you would like. All right, we're gonna move into our work session. I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Sanchez.
Yeah, so we're very excited to share an update regarding our MTSS process. Tonight, we have our Executive Director for Instructional Support, Ms. Jessica Turner, who will provide the Board of Education update. It's fair to share too that, the Board of Education has, asked and has passed a resolution regarding equity. And you'll see, although it says multi-tiered systems of support, this is an equity effort as well as we begin to think about our work system-wide. And also thank in advance Ms. Turner for her leadership in working with our leaders and our educators across the district. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Turner.
President Bailiff, Vice President
Crossling and fellow trustees of the board. I don't think my mic is not working. Do I get to do over? Okay, there we go.
Make sure it's.
Am I good now? Okay, thank you, Dr. Sanchez.
Just a moment, it's not projecting. Ms. Ortiz. In terms of the screen. Thank you.
I hear something.
Mhm.
Said 30 seconds. Oh, there we go. So there's something. It's not on my screen. I'll just have to do it with it. Okay. All right. So good evening, President Galef, Vice President Crossling, Dr. Sanchez, fellow trustees of the board. I'm really excited tonight to share with you our MTSS process and our goals for the next 3 years. MTS stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. And I think that as I go through the presentation this evening, you'll see how we are going to be supporting our scholars as they rise through our system. So I wanted to start with the mission statement, ensuring excellence for all students through equity, right? So MTSS is really about equitable education and making sure that our students get everything they need. Equal is not the same as equitable, right? So keep that in mind as we go through the process of discovering this tonight. And then our vision is to create a model education system that puts equity at the forefront, right? So what is MTSS? Right, it's an educational word that we throw around all the time. It really stands for multi-tiered systems of support. So you'll see there's a visual of a pyramid. At the bottom, there's tier 1. That is where we do universal education and what you're typically seeing in a normal classroom setting. MTSS is an identified best practice that supports equity And it focuses on the academic needs as well as the social emotional needs of students and includes multiple measures. So multiple data points, so we can make sure that we don't have false positives and false negatives. You can also see that there are 2 arrows going up the pyramid. We do continued progress monitoring. So you continually check in with students to see how they're progressing, accelerating their learning and extending their learning, as well as having a team that works together to collaborate and problem solve when students aren't meeting success. So I'm going to go through each tier individually. So tier 1 really happens in the classroom. It's where universal interventions occur. You see core instruction, whole class instruction, and then you'll see scaffolded differentiated instruction where teachers are working to meet the needs of individual students in their classroom. You use data to identify where students are in need for academic support, but also extended learning, right? So I think tier 1 is unique in that there's academic acceleration, but also extended learning. So supporting our striving readers and writers and mathematicians, as well as how do we help our excelling students extend themselves and grow in their learning. Tier 2 is really for targeted interventions of students who aren't meeting success with light interventions in the classroom. So again, it's based upon data. You use universal screening assessments, formative assessments in the classroom. You start progress monitoring the success of your interventions at an identified rate, and then you utilize research-based intervention resources. So in this tier, you have to use resources that have had research to support that they're successful in helping students grow. Again, we have the 2 arrows. And then in tier 3, it's intensive instruction interventions. So this is where you're pulling students either one-on-one or in small groups of 3. Again, you use data, universal screening, formative assessments, and you're monitoring the progress of students, and you use the research-based interventions. Our current practice in the district is we do have a tiered system, but it's mainly building based, right? So our system works in the buildings individually. They have tier 1 instruction in a classroom. They move kids into tier 2 and tier 3, but it's not a system-wide practice that talks across the system. Interventions are documented by teachers through various methods and typically held in permanent records. Universal screening focuses on oral reading fluency, right? It's one domain of reading. And universal screening shifts to emphasize reading comprehension in grades 6 through 12. Our goals for the district for MTSS by 2024 would be to have interventions documented through a systematic platform so that as our students move through their different buildings, the system automatically generates interventions. The universal screening focuses in reading on all 5 components. So phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension, and grades. I don't know what's going on up there, but grades K through 12, and universal screening includes mathematics. So right now we do not have mathematics included in our universal screening. And then common assessments for tier 1, where right now teachers use assessments that they have access to, and some common assessments. We want to include more common assessments, especially in mathematics, and norm reference progress monitoring for all grades in tiers 2 and 3. We're going to go into a design thinking process to do this, and I'm going to explain that a little bit. So this year we are going to create 2 teams, a district level design team and a building level design team. The district level design team will meet once a month and is composed of 3 representatives from each building, so 2 teachers and 1 administrator. As well as district level directors and cabinet members. That way we have divergent voices, making decisions about protocols and processes that we want to implement system-wide. Then representatives will be able to go back down to the building level teams, talk about what district has decided needs to be consistent, and then take that information and as well think about what are the nuances for this building and how does it fit in our culture, right? Because each building has its own culture that we want to honor as well. As we meet and build out that 3-tier system, we will decide what we're going to practice and almost prototype and test and get feedback. And in year 2, we will continue with the feedback process so that we can make adjustments and monitor success, make any revisions, so that by, I'm gonna just go to the slide for a second. So by year 2024, we will have a system in place that doesn't need to be adjusted. It will be smooth sailing because we've already problem solved and gone through the design process. And then our final destination in 2024 would be to have a healthy system where our population would function in these percentiles. So typically you have 80 to 90% of your student population in tier 1, 10 to 25% in tier 2, and less than 10 or 10% in tier 3. And that's an indicator of a healthy system. And this will be a measurement that we'll be able to use to say how healthy is our system. I'm going to go back to this. I wanted to show you this because while we're designing, we're still also focusing on supporting our students this year. And we are already launching Panorama, which is this platform that you see in front of you to help build consistency across the district. This data is not any of our students' data. It's just a screenshot from the promotional information that's available on their website. But you can see instantaneously building level teams can take a look at academics, attendance, behavior, and social emotional well-being of their students. They can get an overview of the building. We can get an overview at the district level, and then you can get specific information around students K through 12. So it looks a little different at secondary level. There might be GPA at the bottom in the academics. Well, this one has GPA too. And then in elementary, it might just be an overall grade. These are not live because it's not real data. I could show you, we could maybe get some screenshots and take information out as we launch this. But academics, you can click on that and it will pull up the student's class and you can really see granularly how well the students are doing or where students might need support. And then we also send out for the social emotional piece, a survey to the student population so we can get feedback from them on how they're feeling about their school environment and their learning opportunities. So that was our presentation. Thank you so much. Any questions? Questions?
Crossing.
Thanks. Oh, there I am. I'm on. So thank you very much for the presentation. I enjoyed it. I know that we have been talking about ways to do what this plan ambitiously says that it's going to try to do for a while. So I do appreciate the effort in this, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it pans out as you get started. I did have a question just because it's always good to know sort of where you're coming from when you're talking about where you want to be. And I was wondering, you had said that the goal of this is to have a healthy system at the end. And are you able to give us some sense of where we are now, if it's not at the meeting tonight, just at some point?
We're currently in the process of giving our screening assessments right now. And so once those are complete, we could definitely get a report for the board to share that information out. I will say that Right now, as I highlighted, we only assess one domain of the 5 domains of reading, and we don't assess mathematics. So one of the things this plan wants to do is take a look at our assessments and say, is our universal screener meeting the needs of what our district says we need to focus on? And if not, through that committee, decision-making, shared decision-making committee at the district level, take a look at what resources are available and see if we have to make a shift.
Thank you. And then just a quick follow-up question. Built into this system is the intent to have screenings for potential learning disabilities built in along the way, such as dysgraphia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, dyslexia. Are you able to speak to that at all?
Absolutely. So in a system like this, tier 1 interventions are monitored at, you do interventions at a 6-week interval to see if students are progressing or not progressing. So when you have 3 data points over 18 weeks that show either stagnant movement or below or above, right? So you'll either see students move up, not move at all, or move down. Then I think what happens in a system like this is you have data that shows either students are responding to an intervention or they're not. And then those continued progress monitoring collaborative problem solving teams are able to take a deeper diagnostic look at why students are not progressing, right? So when you think about reading behaviors and you think about those 5 domains, if we're only assessing one domain right now, we have more information when we assess the 5 domains, and then we're able to quickly diagnose when students are having those more challenging issues that are preventing them and those barriers from helping them meet success. So I find in a healthy system like this, you're able to address that in a quicker rate than when it's not a healthy system. Does that make sense? So I think we will be able to uncover that as we move through the process. And I think the ability to prototype and use the design thinking, the beauty in that is we might be able to respond quicker to what's happening right now, because we're taking a look at that as we're building it out and perfecting it, right? Instead of implementing something and not perfecting as you move along.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Trustee Spring?
Thank you for the presentation. I had a couple of questions as well, one regarding screening. So we know that dyslexia affects roughly 20% of the student population nationwide. Can you speak a little bit onto the implementation of how are we going to tackle that and get children reading at grade level once they're actually screened and that is diagnosed? What's the plan moving forward?
So I think we're already proactive in that because we have our reading teachers trained in Orton Gillingham, which is a multi-sensory approach that already addresses dyslexia, right? So when you look at best practices for helping students with that reading disability become successful, we've already implemented that. So it might just be finding, fine-tuning our screening tools so that we can get to them quicker. But I think we're already proactive in addressing that issue.
Thank you. And is it fair to say one of the goals here is to get students reading at grade level? Is
Well,
that-
as that's always the goal, right?
So I guess my next question is, can we, and it doesn't have to be tonight, can we put a tangible number as to by 2024, what % of our students will this plan get reading at grade level? Is it this 80 to 90%? What is the goal?
I think we could discuss that and
No problem.
bring some information back.
Thank you.
Again, I just say that our screeners right now don't give us a whole picture. So when you're looking at data, you want your data to be accurate, right? So that you have an accurate picture from baseline to 3 years from now. So we can get some information, but that information may shift when we change our assessment, right? Or our screener.
Thank you. And we also know 3rd grade is the quintessential year where you go from
Mhm.
learning to read to reading to learn. Is it
Yeah.
fair to say most of this implementation and most of these resources will be spent on K through 2 to ensure that by third grade, most students are reading at grade level and are at the stage where they are ready to read to learn?
So when you're talking about MTSS, you want that through the whole system because it's not only about reading, right? It's mathematics, it's social emotional behavior. So you don't know when a student might have a year where they're not finding success in a classroom, right? There may be something that happens that causes them to have some setbacks behaviorally or social emotionally or need triage, right? So when you think about MTSS, it's almost like going to the doctor and you're diagnosing what students need at that time. It's not supposed to be a life sentence, right? We don't want students in an MTSS process for their entire K-12 career. We want to diagnose what their needs are, help them meet those needs, build their muscles, whatever they are, reading, mathematics, or social emotional health, well-being, help that muscle become strong again and send them back out into the classroom to be successful. So I would say the goal is to help any student at whatever level meet success.
Thank you. And how, if at all, does the concept of balanced literacy play into the MTSS system?
So I think balanced literacy ties in beautifully because when you go back to tier 1 and the universal interventions, balanced literacy is different than say a basal reading program that teaches to the 80% all the time and doesn't give breadth and space for you to do tier 1 differentiated instruction, right? So we have balanced literacy in our district and teachers are able to teach a mini lesson and then they're able to design curriculum that meets the specific needs of their students in their classroom, which is a tier 1 instruction. And then they're able to accelerate and extend learning and move kids through their reading progressions through that method.
Thank you. And final question. Once we get to this this goal right here, and you said roughly 10% will be in that red zone.
Yeah, that's typical. Yeah.
So this doesn't have to be answered tonight, but what is the plan to then get those 10% into this 80 to 90% so that we eventually, I know perfection is hard to get to, but 10% is 1 out of 10 kids.
Right. So the 10% typically is your students who have real learning or other health impaired issues, and they move on to get extra support through IEPs or 504s, right? So the system is meant to help you diagnose learning challenges or for our striving scholars, and then help you to address them, but also diagnose when they need more intensive interventions or supports. So that's how the system is meant to work so that we get, as you move up the pyramid, you get more intensive and by the end, you might go to a specialist, right?
Thank you. And thank
You're
you for the
welcome.
answers and thank you for the presentation.
Oh, you're welcome. Any other questions?
Brother?
This is more complex. Thank you for your presentation. This is more comprehensive, and I know everything is continuing to be a work in progress, and I appreciate that you're having the monthly meetings with our educators and staff, because it's always important to have a feedback loop, because this doesn't work without our fine educators and staff and our leaders. So thank you for that. I'm looking at the slide of, it's a profile of Eddie Jones. And I wanted to just ask you a little bit about what goes into the numbers of behavior and SEL and what we're expecting to gain from that, having those numbers on a student's profile.
So behavior are our behavior referrals, right, at the secondary level. And then that survey that I shared goes out to the students. So it's a combination of both those data points. At the elementary level, we have PBIS and SWIS, which pays attention to where students are demonstrating some challenges in different settings, right? Because the goal is always to teach, right? That's why we're in schools. So we want to pay attention to where students are struggling behaviorally because it always tells a story. So that data point is telling us why students are not successful in a certain area. So I always go to writing because writing is sometimes challenging for kids and they might misbehave during writing time, right? It's not because they want to misbehave. There's sometimes avoidance behavior or something like that. And so you want to diagnose what the challenge is by paying attention specifically to that behavior. So in this case, it's important for us to take a look at how our students are feeling about their school setting so we can help them have conversations and see how we can address that. Or do we systematically building wide have a concern, right? Because we're looking at a profile of a student, but then there's also the overview of the school. Is there something that we want to work on because we're paying attention to what our students are saying their school experiences, and then address that and make some shifts? Because at the end of the day, we want all of our students to come to school and be happy and have joy, right? But we also need to pay attention to how they're saying their experience is. And so I think it'll just feed into the design cycle and paying attention.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just elaborate. For me, it's, behavior is communication. There's something going on. And it just seems to me that that might just fall in just the SEL category because it's all about the emotional support. So when I see behavior, for me, I'm really concerned about labels on our students and, assumed situations for our students. So I've always been very concerned about having that as a profile, but, or I like to say portrait of a student. So I just want to caution us on that label.
Yes. Yeah, so I appreciate that. And I did highlight more of the academic piece because we're still in the design process, but there's the whole CASEL cell behavior support. That is the other side of this. So when we talk about multi-tiered support systems, it's not just not academic. There's also the social emotional piece. So that's why we want to pay attention to the behavior so we can support this social emotional well-being of our students.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So thank you very much for the presentation. I thought it was very well thought out, very structured. I have just a couple of quick questions on this. If you go back to the dashboard for a minute that had the Eddie Jones on there. Yeah, so is this a dashboard that a student sees? Is it a dashboard that a teacher sees? How is this, who is the user of this dashboard?
So when we go back to, well, I can use this slide. So each tier has a team. So I liken it to a medical field, right? So tier 1 is a team that focuses on interventions for tier 1. Typically in tier 1, it's mostly classroom teachers, our instructional coaches, the principal, and they share the diagnosis of the students' striving areas. I don't like to say weakness, striving areas of our scholars. And then they suggest interventions. And then they implement the interventions, they progress monitor and see if they're successful. So that's why the 2 arrows go up the pyramid, because you have the collaborative problem solving, which is the team. Tier 2 is a different team. You have a reading specialist, more diagnostic reading teacher, building principal, school psychologist, other members of the diagnostic team, and it moves up that way. So the people who see the profiles of the student are the team members that are doing the diagnostic, and then the classroom teacher, right? So if a classroom teacher is putting in an intervention, so we go on this screen, classroom teachers will have access to put in interventions on this platform. So when we pull it up, we can say, we've already done repeat reading with this student. It was done for 18 weeks. The student didn't respond. Their reading hasn't improved. We need to try another intervention, right? So it allows for the discussion, almost like an X-ray. of what has occurred and where the student is right now so that we can choose different methods and keep the student moving forward.
Thank you. So if I'm looking at this alone, right, and the only thing that I feel like it's missing, and I don't know if it's just captured and it's embedded somewhere in this, are the students' strengths. Because there'll be students that'll be strong at something that could be played up to in a way that could be well supported. So if that person happens to be very strong with, I don't know, whatever it might be, like they're very inclined towards music or they're inclined towards art or something like that. Yet they may not be very good with, you know, certain, like math may not be their strong point. Is there something that we would look at that would help us to help that child be guided towards where they might succeed in their academic career?
So yes, there's two things. One, on this profile, this is not an accurate, I mean, it's an image of what the software provides,
Okay.
but it doesn't give you the depth of what the software provides because I didn't want to put our students' information, you know, publicly. I wanted to protect their rights.
Sure.
But if you look at the green and you think about the pyramid that was before, the slide before, the green is success. So this student is academically successful, has an issue with attendance, right? So you can celebrate that they're doing well in class, but they're not coming to class. There was obviously, this slide is to show there was an intervention put in place and then it moved to green, right? That's the purpose of this image. With the red and yellow areas, behavior and attendance were the areas of concern. The red being more intensive, the yellow being the middle. But also we've implemented a RISES process of looking at our students and having discussions. So it's a discussion protocol or a data protocol. And the first part of that protocol is celebrating the brilliance of our students and then talking about what our students are not doing or striving with, right? So I think the mindset of focusing on our brilliance first is in direct alignment with what you were talking about.
Yeah, I would just caution on, I'm just getting a little concerned on the fact that that every student's considered to be the same, and that's not the case. All the students have so much variability in terms of what they do, what they're good at. I just want to be sure that as we look at this and we're trying to diagnose a problem, yeah, the basics, I understand the reading, the math, because that you're going to need for success, and to diagnose those who actually have some need to develop further. But I think the things that we also have to take a look at are, I'm hoping that there's probably more than this, just kind of looks at the whole picture. I just almost feel like this still takes probably about 70%, somewhere there, of the picture of the learner. The other question I have for you, and I'll make this my last question, is around the what happens when you have a kid who happens to be really well accelerated, they're very advanced. Where does that fall into this? Because there's interventions for when we need that support for growth. What happens when you have somebody who is really kind of like looking for that next level of challenge? Where does that fit into this?
So that's in tier 1 where I took my glasses off, but there's a slide back here where tier 1 talks about accelerated learning and extended learning, right? So extended learning is those students who are talented in an area and they're looking to extend their learning. So that happens all in that tier 1. So, and through the design process, we'll be able to talk as a collective group on where are opportunities for students to do that, right? And reading, it's very easy because we use the workshop model, and in math, it's the same thing. And I know in our catalogs, we have opportunities for students at the secondary level.
Great. Thank you for all the work you've done.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Just I appreciate all the details. Just a quick question. The percentage norms that you've got on here, are these things that we've looked at that said these are Ossning targets? Are these national norms, or is this something from the vendor? Like, where are we coming up with in 2-3 years that we want to be at these numbers? Or is this just sort of a high level goal that every district has? If I was in another district, they would see the same percentages. Just trying to understand the percentages a little bit.
So these are national norms that you would see every other district trying to achieve as well. And like I said, it's just an indicator of a healthy system. And that's where the percentages come from. So when you're trying to reach a goal, you want to have a target. And then if we have to adjust the target, we can do that to meet our system, but we always want to start with a goal and a target.
Certainly understand that. I guess what would be helpful to know, and probably beyond the scope of tonight, is just what goes into what makes, tier 1 and the criteria for tier 1 versus the other tiers in those percentages, right? So what standards are there that everybody nationally is trying to reach for, right?
So there would be the grade level standards. So it's performance on grade level standards, but we can definitely,
So in New York, that would be the region standards versus in California and their
Yeah,
program. So
mhm.
that's why I'm just, they're national norms, but they're not really national norms because we're looking at it from a statewide picture, right? So I'm trying to understand it better, not saying that that isn't what they are. but I'm just
right,
trying to understand
and
it
they
better.
also, they use What Works Clearinghouse, and they use other normed reference assessments
Okay.
to come up with these percentiles.
Okay.
So they're not just exclusive to New York.
Okay, fair enough. Thank
So
you.
I think it's also important to clarify too, correct me if I'm wrong, that when we're looking at 90%, we're using local measures. So that's kind of where we want our kids. So it's not based on solely on state, so when we're looking at our benchmarks with our students, this is in essence where we want. So whether it's whatever the measures we have locally, that's sort of where we want our kids based on at least a framework that's been outlined. And again, it's a national framework, but it's ultimately like the goal. And to Jessica's point, it's what's termed as like sort of our aspiration as it relates to our work and our system.
So just as you matured, I think what's aspirational, where we're at, all these things are really important as you look at resources to get you to 2024 or whatever year that is. I think it's important for the board to understand that as we're looking at budgets and other things, right?
Sure. Yep.
Thank you for the presentation, and I'm glad to see how like the vision of trying to move beyond kind of like the compartmentalized classroom aspect and making it a district-wide effort. I'm glad to see how that's panning out, no pun intended. But I would like to ask a question about a couple of things. One is if you could elaborate just a bit more on what the common assessments for tier 1, just a bit more on that, like what is a common assessment?
So there's multiple things, right? So in reading right now, we use reading records from Teachers College. We also have our unit assessments for math. So we have to talk about what we have right now and then what we might design something different moving forward in collaboration with the ASI department and directors and Michelle Greer. But right now we have classroom assessments, right? And that's what you would use in your instruction as the whole class assessment. We also have progress monitoring through FastBridge, but again, it's focused on oral fluency and rate of reading. So those are all done at that common assessment, formative assessment level in tier 1.
Right, and so would that be the point at which you would be able to differentiate, I guess I would say, for the students that are that need a bit more support and the students that are excelling and need a bit more challenge? That would probably be the point at which you decide how to progress from there.
Right, so typically what would happen is a teacher would, well, in the system of the building, someone gives the students the FastBridge assessment, and then those scores come back to the teacher. And then as well as the teacher doing the reading record, then the teacher can take that information and group students based on their specific needs. So it could be accelerated or it could be extending, right? And then that's where that would happen. Same thing with math.
Okay. thank
So
you.
it's a difference between a summative assessment and an assessment to drive instruction,
Right.
right?
Okay. I do have a question around like the behavioral and that SEL kind of monitoring aspect and how it fits into the big picture context wise. That's something I've always kind of voiced concerns of because it's a matter of perspective when we get into things like,
Mhm.
you know, someone's emotional well-being or their behavior. So if you, could you just pull up the slide with the student portrait for a moment? I'm interested, I know this is just an example, but when I look at that, I see the SEL, he seems to be doing quite well. And the behavior, he seems like he might be on the cusp of struggling. Does Panorama have something built in there that kind of points out when data seems a bit skewed and there might be some type of input evaluation that has to happen at that point where a student that seems to be doing very well SEL wise is somehow still struggling behaviorally?
So I'm glad you asked that question. Our Panorama pulls from our student management system. And we have had several conversations with them and taken a look at our data to make sure that what's going into Panorama is accurate. So I don't know if that would happen in our district, because again, this is just an example. I don't know if we would see these colors for our students the way they're displayed here, because we have carefully, painstakingly made sure that the data is going, that's being fed to Panorama is accurate. And I also know that we work, you know, we have an equity team and committee in this district, and equity is really important in having those conversations about what the behavior is. I think that we will be fine with that.
My other question would be, so you mentioned also like the student surveys going out. So I think something like that would involve some aspect of family and parent involvement, right? Like as far as making them aware of that. So I guess my general question is, how does this whole kind of system of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and kind of assessing a student's progress and different interventions, where does the family and parental kind of aspect come into that as far as the efforts to give it like a holistic approach to, you know, achieving these goals that we have? I think we've all acknowledged that, you know, the family and the parents and the community, everything kind of plays a role in the success of our learners. So is that factored into these intervention levels of how we would be engaged more with the parents, the family, anything? I'm just trying to
Absolutely, yep. So I didn't highlight that in the presentation, but I'm glad you asked the question. We're designing the process, but even currently right now, tier 1 is teacher and building principal or assistant principal talking with the families, right? When you move up to tier 2, we have specific letters and communications and meetings that occur with the families, especially at the secondary level, bringing in the students into the conversation as well. So, you know, student advocacy and self-agency is an important aspect of this entire process. And I didn't highlight that in the slides, but like I said, in middle school and high school level, you would see them join their own meetings and have conversations with their parents and say, okay, well, I'm struggling here. This is why I think I am. And I think, and then the conversation around what supports would work, they are engaged in co-creating that with the committee. That's the ideal, right? So guidance counselors being involved, or social workers, or whatever supports the students think they need happening in those meetings and doing contracts and things. So what's nice is this system will be able to upload artifacts, right? So if a student engages in a contract or something that they agree upon, we have that information in the system and we can look at it and we can have conversations about it. And so they're part of the process. And of course, the whole child is the goal, right? Addressing the needs of the whole child and seeing them in the human aspect. So yeah, I don't know what it exactly looks like yet because we're designing it, right? But I'm excited to see how spectacular it'll be.
And so that's about it. I guess lastly, I would say, I know you kind of put down on the last slide, the 2024 goal and how it could be like a self-operating machine at that point. But I would assume that these checks and balances that are designed at the beginning and the implementation would stick around in some form because things change, standards change. goals change, and I would like to know that there's something in place to make sure this very robust system evolves with the times, so to speak.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go back and so we're creating these design teams. They're not gonna just dissipate once we've created this, right? So part of the design process is staying ahead of any changes or whatever's happening in the world. We don't know what's gonna happen. We've already experienced that, right, in the past 2 years. So those mechanisms are the goal would be to keep them in place. They might not meet as frequently because there may not be a need to do that. But like you said, standards may change, environment may change, students' needs may change. We don't know what's going to change, and our students may change, right? So we need to keep those mechanisms in place so we can constantly create that cycle, that feedback cycle
Right.
and revision cycle.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, just a quick question for me. Thanks for all your questions and the presentation. I really like,
You're welcome.
looking forward to hearing more and watching this progress. I think the answer is it's somewhere under either SEL, but we talked a lot over the years about activities and school connectedness, activity being one way that students can be connected outside the classroom. Is that the kind of thing that can be potentially captured in some way to build the profile of being able to look at whether students who are more connected perform better, or just have it as part of the profile to know that we need to work on connecting them with the school or something else out of the school? Is that
So we haven't talked about that being part of the MTSS process, but I know what you're talking about in the studies that students who are connected with school activities are more engaged. Is that what? So I think that that is something that we could, I'll refer to Dr. Sanchez and we could have that information or bring it up in one of our meetings. It's not part of the profile in Panorama. But going back to the students being involved in their own interventions and what they say will bring joy to them in their educational experience, we might, as a system, choose a way to capture that in the upload of documents, right? I don't know the answer to that question yet.
So I would add to, we are looking at a platform called Passport for Good that would help us track particularly student involvement in our schools overall, and also for purposes of volunteer hours and other activities. So that'll help us in this case. Whether the two connect and whether the two will talk, we're not sure of that. So I'm going to assume no first, but look to see if there's ways to link all our systems. But I know Mr. Morrison's been involved in this. He's shaking his head in the back, but it's a very robust, separate system that we're happy to share with the board at some other time.
just see, again, there's so much good here that just think of, like, the conversation about whether students who are on athletic team, attendance gets better during season versus off season. And if you knew their team, and there may be other ways to track that. And, just seemed like that could be an opportunity here.
No, I think that that's a great, highlight that you brought up. And I think that through that tracking, those are the types of things that we'll be able to notice patterns and then maybe put in interventions so that we can address those issues. So yes, in that aspect, that will come up. It will be part, I think, of the conversation. Right? Looking at that, there's a screen that you can't see, but it shows the whole year. So you can look at patterns, like our students absent every Monday, our students absent, before holidays. What are the patterns of attendance? So that will be addressed through the platform. Any other questions?
Any other questions from the board?
It just struck me when we were talking about things that you learn as a system. And clearly and I don't, that advisories are really important for SEL. And the research shows that with advisories and strong relationships that students continue to make with their teachers and other staff, that they'll develop stronger academically and socially. So is this something like an example of what we're expecting to see as a system-wide intervention?
So I can't answer that tonight because we're still building this out. I don't know what the interventions will be for the social emotional piece.
But that would be a likely candidate because of the success in the research and other successful advisories that have happened throughout different schools throughout the state and country.
It could be. Again, I don't know what it will be, but I will happily share our design process as we go through it and share out what the committee has come up with, because I'm sure that teachers and administrators coming together, we're going to have brilliant ideas, right? So, but I will mention that at the committee.
Thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions?
Dr. Sanders, we'll turn it over for you for your report. The, just one technology update. It sounds like our YouTube stream is not working at the moment. People can watch remotely on Zoom. So if anyone's watching the chatter, feel free to let them know Zoom is working, but YouTube is not. Meeting will be recorded, so people will be able to watch it later, but that's the update I'm getting.
So I do want to just take a moment to thank Jessica Turner for her presentation and her update, and we'll continue to provide updates to the Board of Education and our community regarding our MTSS model, but great first presentation, Ms. Turner. Okay, so I'm going to transition over the superintendent's update. There is no PowerPoint, so I'm going to speak more so to give the community and the Board of Education an update. I'm going to be joined by our Director of Transportation, Mr. Minahan, who'll give some details regarding transportation. But I want to start off with a couple elements of pride and just some prouds that we normally share at this period of time. But first, just recognizing that this has been, one would say 2 weeks of school, but this is only really day 6 of when we look at the overall context of our system. So we're still in the beginning stages of our school year. However, I do want to thank all the educators, the families, our leaders that have really worked, as a team collectively, our buildings and ground staff, our clerical, to make the opening of school what I think a very positive one. And at the same time, knowing that we still have some work to do and we're continuing to evolve and learn as we bring all our students back to the start of our school year. And knowing too, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that we started off with a bang in terms of just, it was a day right after a storm and with a 2-hour delay. And yet we brought our students in and we immediately had to institute a 2-hour delay in the midst of a pandemic and not really having had our students in for the first day of school. So thank you to everyone related to that. I do want to recognize a few accolades just to start. We had Natalie Kalman. She was elected for a 2021 Rising Scientist Award, and we're very proud of her accomplishments. We want to thank a number of individuals and groups. We want to thank the PTA who helped with the painting at Claremont School. If you've been outside, it's really beautiful. And at the same time, walking into the middle school, you can see all the chalk that was done, extensive art, I would say. Back to school nights, I want to make sure that everyone's fully aware. Our first one is tonight. All of them start at 7 o'clock. As we've advertised, we had to make some pivots. We had a great Brookside Bash, thanking the Riscos, our PTA and others that helped in organizing that. Save the date. I'm glad Ossining Matters is here. We have on the 16th, we have a movie night at Brookside School and encourage everyone to join. We are highlighting, the Board of Education has asked and posed some questions regarding our tech program. And we'll see on a monthly basis, we've talked to our BOCES to highlight some of our students that are participating. And so I encourage you to visit our website, Twitter, to see Elijah Campbell, who was highlighted by our BOCES Tech Center for the program that he's participating in. And then just making everyone fully aware of after-school program collaboratives that we are joining, i.e. Boys and Girls Club and Healthy Kids. Healthy Kids is a program for after-school services at Park School, and then Brookside, Claremont, and Roosevelt students can participate via Boys and Girls Club. And at the same time, want to recognize that we do have a grant with the Boys and Girls Club that will help and support our middle school students as well. A significant, I believe it's about 80,000 each year for the next 4 years. So I'm going to highlight a few things. I want to go through, first of all, testing and share a little bit of information related to that. First is that we are participating and we're partnering with Westchester County. Miramis is the company that we've been assigned for free COVID screening testing program. I want to clarify that a few things. The financial responsibility of this program is not on the district. It's the Westchester County responsibility for their testing, and they'll be responsible in terms of the fiscal responsibility. All students that are highly encouraged to participate, and staff that are unvaccinated will have to take weekly testing. However, they can opt into the testing program as well. We have already sent out permission slips to all our students and families to see who wants to participate. With that said, I want to clarify, because I've received a few emails from parents saying, you know, I want to opt out. Please don't have my child participate. I just want to encourage everyone, you can save a little bit of time, because if we don't have your consent, your child will not participate. So only if you give us the consent will we have your child participate in the screening process or the screening testing. There are two options that we're considering. We're actually meeting tomorrow to talk about that. We're working with Allison Perriott, the county, the cabinet's meeting to discuss the two options. One will be a take-home testing where the district will distribute testing vials, directions, Ziploc bags for those that have opted into the testing. Individuals take them home, provide saliva samples in the vial. The vials are sealed, placed in Ziploc bags, and returned to school the following day. Miramis, the company, will have a testing team on site to collect samples and bring back to the lab for processing. So that's option one. Option two is on-site testing event. So Miramis will send a team to each school building. Samples are collected in person and on-site. Samples will be then sent to the lab for processing. Those are the two options that we're considering at this time. We haven't necessarily formalized that, but those are the things that we need to consider. With that said, I want to make sure for both the community and for staff that are here as well, that I don't anticipate having this start next week. I will come back to the board and to the community when we feel we're ready. While we heard today that we could potentially start as early as next week, there are a lot of logistics that need to go into that need to be considered. At this point, we have about 500 of 5,100 students that have opted into the testing cycle. So we want to make sure that our outreach is strong, because we've only used electronic versions and emails, and we'll continue to do that, but we want to do some additional outreach to make sure that everyone knows of the opportunity that is available, particularly families, and also provide some education, because what I'm explaining is just through words, and I think it's important to provide some videos and other explanations so everyone really clearly understands what this looks like. But it's very different than the swabs that we've become very familiar with. The testing results as a whole, from what we've been told, would be returned and guaranteed within 24 hours. We anticipate that it would be sooner, but that's like the worst case scenarios. We would know the results within 24 hours. And there is an online system where we would be able to gather the information and be able to share those results then thereafter to all our families. So that's a major highlight that I want to share with the board in terms of an update. And with our community, to note that we are going to move through this process. I know there's a lot of questions, but we will not implement anything until we feel like everyone feels comfortable with it, that our systems are in place. And honestly, I'll just say out loud, I don't know this company very well just yet. They've been someone that's assigned. I want to get to know them. I want to understand their process and make sure. We have reached out to districts that have been implementing this, i.e. Mamaroneck has followed a very similar model to success. They just tested about 4,000 students. I met with the superintendent along with our colleagues from Peekskill. We actually had a collaborative meeting to hear a little bit about their process, and they tested around 4,000 just as an entry point. You may recall, if you've heard the news, that they had a delay in their start, so they chose to use it as a universal screening to begin with. So that's the testing update as relates, and we'll share more information as we go along. My goal or our goal would likely be at the end of this month that we start this process. Then thereafter, it's a 20% of our students that have opted in would participate. Staff that are unvaccinated by law would need to, or by regs from the governor and by law, would need to test every week. And those that opt in will be tested on a 20% sort of cycle. If we can test more, we certainly will, and that's something we'll work on with the company and learn more about that as we proceed and go forward. So that's the testing update. Now I'd like to just transition to transportation, then I'll come back to COVID updates later with some other information. So I'm going to turn it over to transportation. I think I'd be remiss today if I didn't just thank Mr. Minahan for all that he has done with transportation. The beginning of the year, we always know is at least those first few days are, as we're getting through routes, students are starting to understand, their routes. Parents, in terms of expectations, is always some, what I'll refer to some light bumps, and sometimes the bumps are bigger and sometimes it's very, very smooth. And we have all of those taking place at this time. But I do want to, and I think Mr. Minahan will also say, we are very fortunate to have transportation as a whole. That's a broad statement that we can all, that I think we really need to kind of universally understand, and I'll explain why. There is a shortage as it relates to transportation drivers across what we're starting to notice as a deficit throughout the state. If you notice, actually, across the river in one of our neighboring districts, the headline today was around the need for transportation or drivers. So it's been a real challenge, but I do have to say that Mr. Minahan has performed magic in making that work and making sure that we have transportation and buses, because we haven't really felt it. And I know behind the scenes, there's been a lot of work to make that happen. So I'd be remiss if I didn't just take a moment to thank him and also put in perspective the transportation successes that I think we've had to this point. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Minahan and kind of give us a little bit of history, where we are, and then I'll conclude our update.
Thank you very much. And I just want to start out by saying, I don't do this alone. The truth is I have a staff of an assistant and a secretary in the transportation office, and not to mention all the bus drivers, monitors, and attendants who work with us. So Dr. Sanchez talks about the bus driver shortage. We start every day 5 drivers short. So those are filled with substitutes and office staff to make sure that we get buses on the road. So we're close as far as personnel goes. We're very close. So that's why a lot of families are seeing substitute drivers, not the same driver every day. We're working on it. A lot of it has to do with just the national shortage. So we've been very fortunate to be able to put all the buses on the road every day. So Dr. Sanchez wanted me to talk about some of the things that go on with transportation, and some of the things that families are experiencing this year with transportation. So just, quick history. And for the board, I've spoke about this before. In New York State establishes maximum walk distances. So in New York State, a secondary student, meaning a high school and middle school student, can have a maximum walk distance of 3 miles to a bus stop or a school. An elementary student can have a maximum walk distance of 2 miles. In Ossining, the taxpayers, the voters approved years ago to reduce those mileages. So Ossining enjoys a half-mile walk distance for pre-K students through 4th grade, 1 mile for 5th grade through 8th grade, and 1.5 miles from or 9th through 12th, all the high school students. Significantly different than what the state mandates. So just so everybody understands, that walk distance applies from either your house to the school or your house to the bus stop. So when we set up a bus stop, well, let me back up. So approximately 2 years ago, we had a consultant work with us to clean up our transportation because the routes were getting longer, the buses were getting more at capacity. So we brought in a consultant to work with us to restructure some of the transportation. One of the things that we looked at is, reestablishing bus stops. So when we establish a bus stop, we have to look at safety first. So again, in New York State, the state requires us to establish a bus stop that is reasonably safe. So when we say reasonably safe, there has to be a place for somebody to stand, and there has to be visibility. So traffic has to be able to react to a stopped school bus. The driver should be able to see the stop on approach. So that's one of the fundamentals when we establish bus stops. The second thing we looked at was efficiency. So we had numerous stops across the district. So one of the things we looked at was, how do we reduce the number of stops? So one of the ways we reduce the stops is we do community stops, because we were doing numerous house stops. We were in numerous cul-de-sacs, special request stops, those type of things. So we looked at doing community stops that would service not just one family or multiple families, but one stop would service all the schools. So regardless if you started a Park School, that was your bus stop. If you were in high school, that was your bus stop, if you were eligible for transportation. So less bus stops, as a general rule, is more efficient. There's less stopping, shorter route times, less wear and tear on vehicles and such. So the last thing we looked at is stop equity. So one of the things that was an issue for us is there were numerous house stops because we were responding to requests. So the request would be, the bus is going past my house, or it's only one child at the stop. So can we accommodate that? And we had, over the years, we've been accommodating that. So now what we've done is one stop will suit everybody. So what's the benefits of going to a community stop system? Well, there's a number of benefits to it. We had the district completely mapped for stops. So now anybody who moves in the district or moves within the district, all we do is put in that address and it automatically routes that child to a bus, to a route. Before, we would have to load that child in the system and then pin them on the map for that stop. So now it's so much more efficient by just when somebody new comes in, we route them automatically. So the other benefit to going this route is the routes will then have longevity because they won't change year to year. What'll happen is the stops will always be the same, and the buses, it makes life a little bit easier for everybody because the drivers will be familiar with the routes instead of looking for house stops or going into a cul-de-sac to turn around and such. So in the past, what we've done was we started, like I said, responding to requests. The bus goes past my house, only one kid at the stop. All sorts of extenuating circumstances that we deal with on a continuous basis. And that could be anything. That could be, it's a babysitter, can't leave the house to come to the bus stop. That could be sick or elderly family members watching our child. We responded to all of those type of situations. The problem with going down that road is if none of those circumstances fit in your category, then you didn't get that additional service of a house stop. So it's only if you fit into a single student bus stop or the bus was going past your house, did you fit in that category, which was unfair for other people. To give you an idea of what we found as we went through this, Ossining had 773 bus stops across the district. 773. So that includes everything. That includes corner stops, cul-de-sac stops, house stops, special request stops, 773. When we were done, we brought that down to 370. So that's 52% less stops than we had prior to this. Out of that, 180 stops still only have one student at them. So we've been able to better utilize our stops with more students. So as a result of making these changes, we've received a number of complaints. So as we've been receiving the complaints, we've reviewed requests for bus stops, requests for house stops, and we've looked at what the bus stop is. When we sent the letter out with transportation information, we said we'll be changing the bus stop if there's a safety issue at the stop. So what happens is we look at the stop and the stop is safe. The then concern is the walk to the bus stop. It's not the bus stop, it's the walk to the bus stop. So what we've done is we've told people that there's an appeals process. There's actually a process to go through. If you're not happy with my determination, it then moves up the chain to Ms. Zuber, Dr. Sanchez, ultimately the board. And then if people are not satisfied at that level, you can actually go to the Commissioner of Education. So one of the things we tell people is before you actually go all the way, that the walk to the bus stop is not a criteria for changing a bus stop. So it's important that people know that. But that's kind of the background of where we are today.
More questions around transportation, but thank you, Jim. So the last piece I'll just add is going back to the COVID, and they're all related, is to this point, I'll give an update on the number of cases that we've had across the district to this point, reminding ourselves that we've had 6 days in school. We're up to about, we have approximately, as of today, 21 cases of COVID that have been reported. Of those, actually, many of those did not involve a lot of contact tracing of our students, which has been significant. And I do want to share that because there have been questions about the protocols that we've put in place, and understandably, and acknowledging that there's been some questions regarding indoor lunch. But since the beginning, our goal has been and continues, and we've heard some feedback, to try to maintain the continuity of instruction for our children, i.e. more specifically ensuring that our students are not having to quarantine. To give you a sense too, because we did actually, I had our nurse coordinator, Addison Peria, who is what I would term a local hero. Of those cases, if we had those and we didn't use the protocols that we've had, we'd have in excess of 150 potential students that would have had to quarantine. So that gives us a sense of sort of the impact that the protocols have had. With that said, again, we understand and the questions that evolve regarding the indoor use in particular, where we've said we've used our gym spaces, our cafeterias have always been used in all their large alternative spaces. But our goal overall has and will continue to be to make sure that our students, that it's the least amount of disruption to our students as we proceed and go forward. Albeit keeping in mind too, that the Department of Health and their protocols continue to evolve. I anticipate some changes. Word of mouth has that there's even going to be some changes potentially this week related to some of the quarantining and aspects of that, which we'll talk about, obviously locally, and then in turn see what it means for us as relates to our program, our shifts in some of our work, and what maybe flexibility potentially. And I think it's going to lead to some flexibility it might have for us as it relates to our work and moving forward. So that's our update. I wanted to make just at least a statement, understanding that piece of it. I'm sure there's going to be comments and questions. Did want to give you an update on the cases, and really wanted to start off with an update on the testing, which is a major aspect of our work as we're proceeding and going forward. And then obviously we recognize we've received it. I received it yesterday during Facebook Live and received a lot of calls regarding transportation. Some of them common and some of them obviously some new aspects to it as we have some families transitioning from virtual now into live. Their experiences a little bit different regarding the routes. So that's what we have for now, and we'll continue to evolve and give the Board of Education and everyone updates along the way. But thank you everyone for your support and all the work that's taking place to this point.
All right, let me start with one update on the transportation. Mr. Minhan, I think I'm gonna, amend one of your statements. No offense. But each district approaches transportation, I guess I'll call it appeals differently. And I looked into this today and I'll double, triple check, but I went to our source. And in Austining, we have designated the responsibility for our bus routes and stops to the superintendent and his or her designees. So that's the chain that you've laid out in terms of yourself and Ms. Huber and Mr. Sanchez. Our current process does not involve the board directly in the appeals process. Because the board can always ask the chain to look at something again, but the state law, as you mentioned, does provide families with the appeal process related to transportation. And that is the state ed department. It's the 310 appeals process. And it has some specific timeframes that people will want to follow. I believe it's 30 days from the time of sort of the complaint that you have to go to the state. The state has some specific times to come back. So we as a board going forward could decide that we want to be in the appeals process or not, but we currently aren't set up. And I would suggest that for us to get ourselves into the appeal process, we would need to amend our policies, and we know that takes some time. So I just wanted to bring that to the front on that part of the conversation. All right, so any questions on any of our topics? Steve Spring.
I have a question. Just a question for Mr. Minahan, if you don't mind. So firstly, I do want to say thank you for all the work you have done, and cutting it by 52% is an excellent accomplishment. I did have one maybe suggestion, or I guess it is a question, if you will. And I know school board law does forbid me from talking about specific bus stops or students, so I'll ask a general question. And that's when a bus is going, or a bus stop is on a main road or a highway, or not a highway per se, but busy intersection, and it eventually goes onto a less busy road that's very near that intersection or that bus stop. Is there any way to explore moving the bus stop from that busy intersection or that busy area to the side street that it's going to turn down anyway? Would that, I mean, to me, that wouldn't affect efficiency because it's the same amount of stops, and it would make a lot of sense for safety, because then you're dropping them off on a side road instead of on a busy road. So is that possible to explore?
That is, yes, that is possible.
So in terms of getting you specifics, do I send that to the board and then the board sends that to you? Or what's the chain of command?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe the process is to come through the superintendent.
Okay,
So however your correspondence goes, that's my understanding.
so Dr. Sanchez, I would give you the correspondence.
But I guess we can talk more about it because it really should come from the parents in this case, but we can talk more about it.
Sure. Thank you.
Acharya.
Thank you, Mr. Minahan, and thanks for elaborating on some of the work that's been done thus far. I guess a couple of things. This morning I took the liberty of driving around, just see kind of like what this looked like, at the time of the bus stops. And, there's some clear differences between some of the areas where the housing is a little bit more dense, where there are sidewalks that are there, makes it safer and easier for some of the kids to stand. Whereas if you take a look at some of the busier roads that are kind of more, that are heavy traffic, and there are kids that are standing probably as close to the edge, there's no shoulder, no level of protection that's there. I don't wonder whether we may want to revisit or relook at some of these in terms of, to the suggestion that Trustee Spring made of bringing some of those students that are like right there on the corner of that really busy road into more of a safer area. There are some areas particularly where, it just, there is no place to really stand because a lot of our community, particularly where it's less dense, have no sidewalks whatsoever. And there isn't even really much of a place to stand for that matter. And there's, on these busy roads, there are quite a lot of cars that are driving at a fairly high rate of speed, particularly given the road that they're on. And I think that creates a safety concern that I think it may just need to be revisited a little bit there.
Okay, when we receive the complaints, we go out and, look at the stop, look at where there's place to stand. But we also take into consideration what's traffic control at a particular area, what are road speeds at a particular area, what's the time that a bus is coming or scheduled to come. So it's a little more involved than just going and looking at a roadway or an intersection and say, yep, that's dangerous, or nope, that's not dangerous. So, when it comes in, we look at it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your update. I do appreciate it. I appreciate that we've used the computer software to make the efficient changes. It's obviously more efficient, right? If we've cut the number of our bus stops in half, that's something that should be commended, right? So that aspect of it there is working. I just hope, and I'm sure you'll assure us that that was our starting point, and then we've put a human touch on that efficiency in a way that prioritizes the safety of the students first and the efficiency second. So I know that, there are inherent in the law, certain requirements that we have to make. I also hope that in situations where, we're taking a close look at situations where there's a relatively easy fix to sort of tweak the system and tweak the recommendations in a way that balances everything.
Well, we look at it, but safety is first. And then after that, we have to look at, what's fair. So not every situation, it's not comparing apples to apples all the time. So we do look at those. But once we kind of open that door for a specific situation, we're then, obligated to provide that to everybody in that same type of situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
so-
does. So I guess it seems like the main reason, when you have a situation where you're just talking about one student is we're prioritizing the continuity of the bus routes year to year. So I just, it seems like on the list of compelling reasons, if you're asking me, as less compelling for me, but you're the transportation guru, I'll certainly defer to you. But if we were talking about prioritizing student safety with the longevity of routes, I'm going to go with student safety every day of the week. I'm sure we can all agree.
I agree.
Yeah.
I feel like I just need to say something in support of Mr. Minahan and just be really explicit. The presumption, I don't want to presume that the statement leads one to think that that's not the focus of the transportation department. That's really is, we may have disagreements, and I'm sure there are, and we've heard some of them. But I can assure you, Mr. Minahan has gone out to look at them, and Ms. Zuber has gone out. I personally went out this year to a couple spots. So safety is of major concern, and as it is with COVID and with other areas. So I just need to say that out loud for everybody. Again, noting that we may have differences of opinion, but that is something that's paramount for Mr. Minahan and the entire team, and for myself as superintendent in the district as well.
Anything else? All right. Jim, a couple questions or comments. One thing that was, wasn't as clear on, but I think you articulated, which is that our obligation is to provide a safe stop. That, you know, the bus stop itself has to be safe. So I think if my kids were on right off Overton Road, which is a very busy road for 8 years, but our stop was at, you know, we could stand on the top of Overton, which was not as busy. So I didn't love the stop, but I could easily see the argument that it was a safe stop. Years ago, we had the argument of, you know, walking along Underhill there's no sidewalks and it's busy, and yet half our high school walks that route. And I mean, not half the high school, a lot of kids. So I think that's one thing that, as you're talking to people, you might want to make clear that is, when we talk about safety, that is the issue. And whether we like it or not, it's the parent's obligation to get, or the family to get the child to that stop. That's the way transportation is. We as a community have looked at transportation costs, and as we've had our budget conversations, we've talked about ways to be more efficient and save money. And transportation has definitely been a key of prior boards and the community that want to spend less money on buses. So I can see how these efforts, this is where I don't remember the exact numbers, but, you know, transportation has been held in check for many years now because of the kinds of things that you've done. And I think you gave the example today of, I could see how easy it is to say, you have one person at the bus stop right now, but someone in, you know, on another street might be in the exact same situation, but there happens to be 2 people on that street. And why do those 2 people have to go to a stop that this person with the one person doesn't have to go to, you know, the community stop? So I think, I don't know the exact answer, but I certainly could see how the logic, you know, and the approach is.
Yeah, so as best we can, we try to apply a universal standard to the bus stop, right? So I think you said it best. Oftentimes what I'll tell parents is the stop may be designated the corner, but you don't have to stand exactly at the corner. I've told parents, you know, you can stand back from the intersection and wait for the bus to stop and then approach the bus when the bus gets there. So you don't have to stand on top of the intersection, you know, if that makes you, you know, feel more safe. That's absolutely fine. And oftentimes this solution is as simple as that.
Steve Banta, yeah.
You spoke before about there's multiple parameters that go into safety considerations, and I think you said blind spots when the bus stops was one of them, and a couple of other things. I'm curious if you can clarify some of the stops that have been probably the most concerning for parents or brought to your concern the most. Have they been evaluated for, like, the risk of the blind spot safety is worse than the risk of, you know, any other risks that might be have been brought to the your attention? I guess because I think you also said like as far as traffic adhering to the, like actually seeing the arm out and stuff like that. I'm assuming that all those considerations were brought into the fold when evaluating the risk assessment of the stop. Is that what you were saying earlier?
So to give you an example, right? So we have multiple stops on Route 9. We have multiple stops on 134, stops on 133. Those are very heavily traveled roads. And when we observed some of the bus stops, what the buses do, exactly what they should do. They're slowing down. They're basically collecting traffic behind them and slowing them down as well to come to their stop. In many of those locations, we have no crossing. The buses are routed for door side only pickups. So we're not having anybody cross on any of those roads. They're door side. So the bus does exactly what it's supposed to do as it approaches the stop and what we expect it to do. And we're not concerned if, you know, if a car goes by, because everybody's on the door side of the bus. They're on the safer side of the bus. So we look at those type of things. We look at, like I said, blind spots. So Hawks Avenue is an example. So as we get closer down towards Dale Avenue, the road has a slight curve to it. That's not a great place for a bus stop because cars coming can't react to the bus fast enough. So they would come around the curve. Next thing you know, there's a stopped school bus and we're not trying to cause an accident. So that would not be a place to put a bus stop. So those are the things that we factor into when we're looking at bus stops.
Thank you.
Any comments? Touches, I want to ask a question back on the food question. I guess I saw you posted a picture of another school, I think it was up in Ithaca, that had outdoor eating and a situation different than ours. I mean, I know our conversations to date have been, the objective is to try and get kids eating outside as much as possible. And while weather's good, are there ideas we've explored or are still exploring that, just trying to get a sense that, we're looking at everything we can look at and the community knows that, I know this is a problem that, the criteria for the problem.
So we're not done looking at anything. I mean, we're continuously looking, we're continuously having conversations. Again, we've even received more recently feedback. Our default right now has been to really work towards having our students outdoors to eat. There's, again, when the weather is nice, we have some pleasant weather, at least at this point, but we know that there's the window that is going to be short. And we're gonna have to think about what, more permanent indoor eating arrangements are. Again, the Westchester Department of Health guidelines could very quickly change and things could evolve and give us some flexibility that we can foresee. However, I think we all collectively are trying to work to ensure that we reduce the amount of students that are impacted by the eating. The eating and the busing is basically where we have the greatest vulnerability as it relates to folks having to quarantine. The bus, to the extent that we can spread within the bus, although it's limited, is the bus. The eating, there is this, what I'll refer to as like this 15-minute rule that individuals, I didn't create this rule. It's been by the Department of Health. That if students have their masks down lower than 15 minutes, then the impact in terms of beyond that, then the impact in terms of quarantine sort of clicks, right? So we have a number of things. We have mask breaks, we have snacks, we have just general life of our children in our classrooms. And so we're trying to minimize the impact and keeping that sort of number in mind. And then that's in turn why we've led to looking at alternative spaces like our gymnasiums, cafeteria, and others. But in response to your question more directly is that things are continuing to evolve. Our principals are emailing and looking at different things as we speak, based on, what they're experiencing, because now we're starting to live the system. And those things we're going to get continuously better as we start seeing how we can work more efficiently, how we can make the environment even more warm and inviting for our students, and at the same time maintaining the safety as a goal for our students and our staff at the same time.
All right, so we are going to start our first comment period. It was actually for the board on a Zoom today with the New York State School Board Association, and they had a suggested language for board presidents to use to introduce this period, which I kind of like, so I was going to introduce it today. It's a little longer, obviously, than normal, but I think includes some very important points. The board is here to listen. Public comment period is not designed to be a discussion. Accordingly, we do not expect the board to respond to your concerns and questions, not necessarily respond to your concerns and questions tonight. This is because we take your concerns and questions seriously and want to have sufficient time and process and research issues if need be. We will, however, respond to questions and concerns at a future meeting and/or have proper staff member get back to you at the appropriate time. I want to point out that under state and federal privacy laws, we're not able to entertain any comments on or questions about school personnel or individual student matters. And these matters, we ask that you go to the appropriate administrative channels. If you need help understanding where to go in terms of principles, et cetera, we can help with that. And we recognize that right now our nation, our community are polarized by a number of issues. We want our school board meetings to serve as an example to our students that members of our school board, members of our community can deal with controversial issues in a civil manner and demonstrate respect for one another. I would turn that personally as when you talk to us, feel free to use the same tone you use like you just saw in the supermarket, and it makes everything better. That's great supermarket conversations. We'll ask that speakers and members of the audience maintain civility and respect for any divergent views and that others possess. We ask the speakers address their comments to the board directly rather than the audience. And I know when we have people like Mr. Minahan here that you address us and not the staff who happen to be here. We can point to them as appropriate to answer questions as we see fit. And remind you, you can always submit written comments if your questions aren't all answered here tonight. We have our BOE at osneosfd.org email address. And before you speak, please state your name and address. Each speaker will have 3 minutes for this comment period, which will be about agenda items. So we will start with our in-person audience. I'll get my timer. All right. Good.
But we're gonna have a 9-year-old. Because the 9-year-old. You want to say your name? Okay. She got nervous, so I'm gonna speak for her. Do you want to just tell everybody your name and your address? So I'm Kim Santos. I live at Redway Road in Ossining. And I want to say that I am I'm nervous, I'm sorry. I appreciated the presentation on the transportation. And I thought that hearing everything that I heard was much more than I've gotten in email form, and it was very informative and it made a lot of sense to me. I am one of the streets where my daughter gets on the bus at a very busy road, and then the bus turns up and goes up a quiet street and passes our street. And I just want to say that I appreciate the questions that I heard the board asking, and I hope that the conversation continues. And that's all. So thank you for that. Want to say anything? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'd just like to follow behind Kim because she is my neighbor, Marissa Caruso. I'm also at Redway Road, and I've written to Mr. Minahan and Ms. Zuber with my concerns about the adjustment to our, I actually had like a written, I thought we would have an opportunity to address the board, and, you know, pardon that I feel unprepared now, because I also did get a lot of information this evening that I appreciate, which I had requested, and I was waiting to receive it. I had not received it. I do continue to have concerns about the safety of the corner at 134 and Minkle Road. We have I have children in the district, a 10th grader and a 6th grader. We've been in the district since 2010. Historically, our stop has always been at Redway Road and Minkle Road. For those who are not familiar with the area, Redway Road is a cul-de-sac off Minkle Road. Minkle Road is about a third of a mile up from 9A. And the curve is somewhat blind on both ends. And when I did speak to Mr. Minahan and Ms. Zuber, they said that they went out to look at the spot and they deemed it safe. I still have a number of questions with regard to how we determine safety. When we started in this district in 2010, I had been advised by the district that buses leaving that development, because it's a cul-de-sac, you have to turn around one way in, one way out. You can't, it's not through traffic. But when we had first moved into that development and my children were young, I was advised by the district that it was unsafe to make a left turn off of Minkle Road onto 134. So I'd sort of like to understand now how we've determined that this is the safer spot when less than 100 feet from there is the corner of Minkle and Redway, which has historically always been the stop, would not be designated as the community stop. Additionally, I'd like to add to that, that the homes that are along 134 are not serviced by that stop, nor should they be, because it is unsafe and those children and students cannot walk safely to the corner of 134. With that said, the bus coming to AMD is making 2 stops along on 134, 2 homes apart, which it should because it's unsafe for those children to walk. And then it's stopping again at 134 to pick up my child, to turn right on Redway Road, come past the safe corner that has always historically been the stop, to go up to Bracken and Minkle to make a stop and come back down. And my only ask would be to consider making the safer corner that only services children on Redway and the lower portion of Minkle the designated stop, because it's the safer stop. And I appreciate the efforts by Ms. Zuber and Mr. Minahan to come out. I understand that they looked at the stop
Thank you.
after
Yep,
my
that's-
request.
That's your 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just want them to come out during rush hour because the middle of the
you.
day, it's a different.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Jeffrey, 100B Morningside Drive. I think what everybody has said behind me is that they got more information that they ever had before, even though they've been emailing with Mr. Minahan extensively, some people for 2 years. So that speaks to one issue, which is that this information about the fact that the school has gone to a community stop model was never disseminated out to the community in general. With the amount of information that we get and the amount of oblasts we get, I have to say, even if it was sent once, that was not enough for us to actually understand. The consultant, obviously, and the computer came right before the pandemic because the pandemic's been 18 months. And if 2 years ago it started. I would also say that the concern that I keep hearing for myself, I don't believe my stop is safe. So when we speak about safe, the case law that was thrown at some of us says that what the board can consider is safety, convenience, efficiency, and cost. And there is a question as to what is being considered safe when you have children who are standing by themselves, when you have children on heavily trafficked roads, when there's a safe alternative that is not going to change the efficiency, nor the cost, nor the equity of any other child, no negative aspect to any other child being picked up. It makes no sense that there's a hard and fast rule for every single bus and every single portion of our town. We live in a town that has different pieces of it. There is density in some, urban in some, sprawl in some, almost rural in some. And to say that we're going to do a one-size-fits-all community stop model for every bus that stops in a particular location seems to me insanity. Because what works for a high school child to be standing with 3 other high school kids in a particular area a certain way may actually not be as safe or the same for another child who's 7. And that child or that stop in Redway and Minkle may not work or can work for what is on North State Road or Highland Avenue. We have sidewalks in some places and not in others. To have kids standing on 134 and hitting a bus stop instead of being on a safer road where the bus passes anyway doesn't make any logical model. You used the words last night on your FB. You said logical model, and you were talking about something else. I will say there's no logical model to not taking some of the issues that are being brought and concerned and making some changes that will not change the efficiency or the cost or the equity of any other child and will be safer. And
Thank
so
you,
I'm
Kim.
asking
Thank
this
you.
board, I'm
Thank you, Kim.
asking this
Kim,
board
thank you.
to please look at that.
Thank you.
Hello, and Joe Passanetti from Jenkins Court. Mike Risco at the Brookside Bash told everyone how when he thinks back, he remembers how he loved Brookside and it was always his favorite. What kid 10 years from now is going to look back at their high school graduation and talk about how awesome Brookside was? Where they get to wear a mask nearly all day, sit on the disgusting floor in single file to eat, and don't have the bare minimum amount of time it takes for a human to even eat their food. Who, when at a school-sponsored event, hundreds had the best time using the playground, are then told at recess they can't use it and are made to believe it's unsafe. What's the plan for November to March where it's going to be too cold to even be outside? The CDC specifically states localities should be using community transmission, vaccination coverage, and outbreaks to determine policies. Quoting Dr. Sanchez, who I respect and takes my calls, there is no spread in school. Those that quarantine are not coming down with the virus. I think it's important. Cases aren't where the student has gotten it from another student. I have no example of that. From what I'm told, 90% or maybe more of teachers are vaccinated, and almost 80% of our entire town is vaccinated. With all this good news and history of quarantine showing no benefit, why aren't we allowing normal lunch or use of the playground or taking our masks off for kids, especially when outside? We should be leading by example. Lastly, I'll leave you with this sad reality. I have a 4-year-old at Park School who, when we asked about lunchtime, told us how much she enjoys eating by herself. What childhood development expert thinks that's a normal response? As you can see, I have lots of questions and few answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jen Stern. I am a resident at 50 Ganong Drive. Just to quickly introduce myself, I'm a mom of 3 girls, one of them that just started pre-K this year. I worked in education for many years, but I'm here to talk to you guys about an amazing program that we have, which is our dual language program, which I first learned about when my niece, who's now 12 at AMD, started when she was in pre-K. Since then, 4 of my nieces have absolutely thrived in the program, all beginning in pre-K as well. And I'd like to seriously congratulate all of our district for implementing such a program that really surpasses expectations in terms of the social and emotional needs of all of our children as early as 4 years of age. So I can speak from experience when I hear my nieces, even the youngest right now in 2nd grade, talking to their Cuban grandmother and 90-year-old great grandmother in Spanish and completely having conversations and understanding. And it's just leaves me speechless. And I'm really like the program that we have is astonishing. It's really amazing. But not only can they speak to family, but other people in the community, which is, we know Ossining is so beautifully diverse. This program breaks down barriers and fosters not only acceptance, but appreciation of our cultural differences. So we know that this program is a huge success because it is demonstrated by the request for admission, which exceeds the number of spaces that we have in the district. So what I'm here to do today is to really insist that our district strives to improve on our success of such an innovative program by meeting the demands of the community, like other well-managed organizations do. I urge you to use available resources such as the CARES Act funding to provide an additional pre-K class to meet the demand that has resulted in a waiting list. Those students that are on this waiting list are being left out of a program which would benefit them substantially. And it is within the power of the board to implement this suggestion at the earliest time possible, even mid-year or by winter break. So thank you all for your consideration of my recommendation. And please, if you could address my request to the entire community, as I'm sure many other families will appreciate hearing about this as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I live at 33 Prospect Avenue. I have 3 boys in the district, one that's 6 years old in Brookside, and I have 2 in Claremont. I know people know why I'm here, but I am just upset with the fact that my child came home crying on Friday because he couldn't eat his lunch. And I was confused by that because he said Friday is his favorite to get pizza. I asked him what happened. He said they were eating outside and there was ants all over his food. This is unacceptable. And I know that you guys are doing your best and that outside is definitely better than my child laying on the gym floor to eat, which is disgusting to me in general. But we need to do more for these kids because at the end of the day, they are at school from 9 till 3. I'm not asking a lot by saying they need 30 minutes of play and 30 minutes to eat. I don't need a child coming home because they're hungry. I don't need a child coming home that they're hungry because their food was dirty. I just need my child to go to school and feel safe and protected in the hands that I leave them with. I am very sad that we now are in this world, and I get it, we're all in it together. But I do not think that the floor of the gym or outside where there is bugs to be had on their food should be a choice. It's actually ridiculous to me that my child is even thought to sit on the floor for lunch in a gym that hundreds of people walk through daily. I don't care how much you mop it, it's not clean. And I also want to go and say that my son cried to me about, it was raining one day. I asked him what they did at recess. He said, my recess teacher told us to sit at our desk and read our book. And if we were to talk, we would get in trouble. And this is unacceptable and something needs to happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aiden Venuto, Ganong Drive. I'm at a loss of where to begin today. There are so many issues that I find disheartening with our district, so I'll try to keep it pretty broad. I'm appalled at what is happening to Ossining School District. I'm embarrassed to say that my children attend these schools. I pay taxes and I have the right to think my child deserves better. I have the right to be angry. I'm angry at the fact that our schools are busting at the seams because our district and Board of Ed members have let residency verifications go unchecked for almost a decade, and our village officials do nothing about illegal housing and greedy, irresponsible landlords. I'm angry that as a result of this, we can't even offer our young students tables to eat at every day during this pandemic. Instead of putting them on the floor like dogs, you have sat here for the last 18 months citing CDC, DOH, and every other health organization's bogus COVID protocol and procedures. But did any of you think for a moment about how unsanitary, unhygienic, and flat out disgusting it is to have our kids eating on the floor? I understand that the people sitting on the board volunteer for these positions, and I applaud you for that, but you must do better. Dr. Sanchez, you repeat over and over about following guidance, about taking a stand and doing what is right for everyone and following common sense. Dr. Sanchez, you and I had a phone conversation at the end of the summer, and you told me at the end of it, enjoy your kids because time goes fast. And you're absolutely right. However, I'm not concerned about enjoying my kids because I enjoy all four of them every minute of every day. However, I am worried. I am worried about my kids' well-being while attending this district. I'm worried about their education. I'm worried that the superintendent and the members of the Board of Education do not have the best interest of all children in mind. Since my address to you guys at the last board meeting in which I took a stand to unmask our kids, many people in the community have attacked me and my opinions and said, well, then pull your kids if you're unhappy. But why is that fair to me? I deserve to have my voice heard and my concerns addressed fairly and without bias. But by all means, Dr. Sanchez, if you or any of the board members who are uncomfortable with what I have to say, Feel free to provide me with a district transfer request letter to the New York State Department of Education stating that this district is not able to handle this volume of students and therefore can't address the needs of all students equally and safely, then I will gladly pull all 4 of my children out and take my school taxes with me.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Barrett. I live at Maria Lane, and I know you guys know who I am. I forwarded the emails for 2 years that I've gone back and forth with Mr. Minahan regarding our bus stop. 2 years in a row, the change has been made based on safety. The only difference this year is instead of my 3 children, well, my 2 plus my nephew who lives next door, is 2 more children live next door and are being asked to walk 3/10 of a mile because we can, that's what the district says, to a corner where there is a business, Grace Lane Kennels. Many of you probably take your dogs there. You'll know there's a wall, which leaves about 3 foot of standing area, a blind corner where I can't see. I drive a 33-foot RV. I'm well aware of the visibility on this road. I can't see when I'm turning that corner. I can't see when I'm coming in. So I don't expect people to be able to see my children when they're coming in. You've got 5 children from the age of 5 years old to 10 walking up to one stop to accommodate somebody who's getting the bus at Grace Lane, who, by the way, doesn't live there. So our 5 children are walking for this community stop when the community stop should be where the children are and they can wait safely in driveways. It doesn't have to be in front of my house. You can pick them up halfway down the block. I don't care. And pardon my shaking voice, I'm angry. And I'm so frustrated that we've made this change for 2 years for my children. And you have it. You have the first year. Last year, my children were homeschooled. So the change was made for my nephew, Jack. And this year I was given case law. Well, you don't have to have a sidewalk. The visibility doesn't matter. The distance doesn't matter. Your safety doesn't matter. That's what I hear. I don't hear how this benefits anyone but Mr. Minahan and the board. I don't hear how this benefits the children. Where is the benefit to the kids? You reduced it by 50%. Well, let's go for 40. Why even have that many stops? Let's just have 10 stops for the whole district. The stops don't make sense. The efficiency and the equity isn't there. If you look at my letters, no time was added to the route when they changed it back. Mrs. Barrett, your stop will be at the same time. We're just changing it. So 3/10 of a mile, is that the wear and tear? That's the wear and tear that we're going to put for children's safety. No minutes were added. Not one single minute was added to the route, but you guys feel that they should walk to the end. 5 children should accommodate 1 who doesn't live there, doesn't even get off the bus in the afternoon. This doesn't make sense. It doesn't. It benefits nobody but the district. And I appreciate cost reduction. I'm a nurse. Believe me, I hear about cost reduction all day. I get it, but it's not benefiting the kids. It's not benefiting their kids. It's not benefiting my kids. It's not benefiting any of the other parents that have emailed and just been told, we can't give you a house stop. I don't want a house stop. I want to stop on the road that's safe away from the intersection where there is nowhere to stand, particularly when there's bad weather. But I was told Mr. Minahan will come back out when it snows. That's
Thank
my
you.
answer. I'll come back out when it snows. This isn't right, and it's not fair to the kids. And I'm asking you guys to please do something.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? All right, now we have some digital hands raised. Ellie, let me know. Okay. Right, our Summer Coulter, I think you're in and on mute, or you're off mute, all right?
Sorry, can you hear me? Can you see me? Hi, can you? Okay. I just want to thank everybody. I've learned so much on the call. I would like to say that I'm extremely proud to be part of Ossining, and extremely proud to have my son be part of not only the school district, but the community at large. I am concerned about our bus stop. Right now, we are at 2 Ramapo, and we've been asked to have the kids, it's not just my kids, it's also my amazing neighbors. So it's 4 little ones. They go to Brookside. They're being asked to stand at the top of imagine like a T at the top of a very big hill that's very popular for anybody that goes to Acme. And the problem is that there's no stop sign on, it's not a 3-way stop sign. And when you go up the hill, I've been actually recording the last couple of days. People have to accelerate quite a bit to get over the top of the hill, and there's no stop sign at all. And that's where our kids are being asked to cross the street. It's also, we've asked our neighbors there if we could stand in their driveway, and they have said no. So there's literally no place to stand unless we have to cross the road. And also the corner is where all the snow goes on our whole street. So I don't know how that's going to work out in the winter. We're very concerned. And if this keeps up, I am going to have to not utilize the wonderful services of the Ossining school buses. I'm going to have to drive because I just don't feel like he's safe. I also would like to just say, I think that it should be noted, we have no sidewalks, we have no shoulder, and our neighbors don't like us walking on their grass. It does mean we have to walk in the middle of a road that everybody is just going so fast to get the milk at Acme. So I would just like everybody to reconsider that and maybe communicate a little bit more, because if you call it a community stop, maybe we should, as a community, kind of decide where the stop, maybe reach out to the communities and find out where those stops could be best placed within our community, our like mini community. Thank you so much for all the hard work you do. I don't want you to ever think that I don't appreciate every single one of you and what you do for our kids. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right, Rob Milstein, you're on your way in. You're on mute.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Rob Melstein, Stonegate Road. So my question is going to be for the board, if Mr. Minahan is still there, to clarify the overall policy around COVID protocols on the bus. But my first comment is I would agree with some of the other speakers around lunch and recess. I know this has been an issue that's come up previously, and it's been told like there's not much we can do about it time-wise. And I can just tell you again, anecdotally, our son had 1 bite of his sandwich today. He ate a cookie because he's 8, and that was it. And it is kind of sad. And there are documented peer-reviewed studies that show longer lunch and longer recess leads to better outcomes. So I like to see how the district leads on other ways, like our dual language program, to really take a look at this and have it on the table. If it's contractual issues, well, let's try it. Let's take a look. But with that said, the bus. So if Mr. Minahan's still there, if you can ask him to please just clarify the COVID protocols. We appreciate that he went back to Royal Coach, make sure all the windows were open on the bus. But we want to understand if it's Ossining's policy to 1, take attendance for each student on the bus, present, pick up and drop off. And 2, if there's assigned seating. I'm specifically referring to K-4 because that's what I'm seeing in our kid is in 3rd grade, but I'd like to hear the district policy overall on this. Mr. Minahan did say that starting last week, attendance would be taken and assigned seats would be into place, and that is not happening. So if it is a policy of the district, if we can please make sure that will happen, because as you know, as Dr. Sanchez pointed out earlier, the highest potential transmissions point are at lunch and on the bus, and it will help everyone contact tracing and quarantining if we are taking that attendance and or assigned seating, again, neither of which is currently happening. So my question is, if you could please clarify, I asked the board to please clarify with Mr. Minahan, if he's still there, if he can clarify those policies around COVID for K-12, but my specific question is K-4. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Amanda Rafsky, you're in.
Hi, Amanda Rafsky. 181 South Highland Avenue. I just wanted to touch on three things. One, as I sit here and listen to the Board of Ed meeting, my son is here as well, listening, and Dr. Sanchez had mentioned that kids were getting mass breaks during the day. I have asked my son about this, but as he said that, my son said he's fibbing because my son says he gets no mask breaks during the day. So that is pretty upsetting. It's upsetting that he heard you say that and he's saying it's not truthful. The second thing is, why are the kids not eating lunch in the classroom and then breaking either in the gym or outside to eat their lunch as they did last year? It seems like at least they have a desk to eat at where they're not sitting on the floor. I now pack hand sanitizer in my son's lunchbox because of the dirt and germs that he could pick up when sitting on the floor and then eating all his handheld snacks and sandwiches. And lastly, I don't have an issue with the bus, but it's funny that it's a topic and on the agenda tonight because there is a family that lives close to my bus stop. And this morning when I was going to work, I saw the girl nearly hugging the trees, and the cars that drive down Revolutionary Road are at high speed. They're well above 30. I've seen them pass the bus while it's stopped with its stop sign out. They're reckless. And these poor children have no sidewalk to walk on. I mean, I'm not surprised a car hasn't clipped them already. Safety is a huge concern when there are no sidewalks for people to stand on or walk to the community bus stops. It's terrible. And I would hate to see something happen to one of these kids before something's changed. I mean, this isn't even my kid. It's not, it's not my bus stop, but I feared for her, seeing her walk to the community stop. I actually reached out to a neighbor to ask about it, like, hey, what's going on with, Lucas and his sister? They're walking, where are they catching the bus? And now I know why they're walking on this dangerous road. It's terrible. And I hope that for the safety of the children, the school rethinks cutting back on stops because safety is most important.
Thank you. Yes.
The policy you read at the beginning of the meeting, I think comments, personal comments should be restricted as part of these comments. And in that last exhibit, I think there were some comments that walk that line. I'd ask you to, when that happens, please interject.
Okay.
Thank you.
Benjamin, you there?
Yes, hello. So first of all, thank you all very much for your hard work and for listening to concerns of the community. And I wanted to say that, for me, just ensuring that children are safe from COVID is the most paramount concern. There are a lot of things being discussed in terms of lunches and so on, but whatever reduces that indoor unmasked time is, I think, the most crucial thing. My family has been very conservative about how we've handled things with our unvaccinated children who, are not old enough to be vaccinated. They're 4 and 7. And so I know other people have other concerns, but for me, it's just limiting the unmasked time indoors. That said, the understanding that my family has and some other families at Brookside is that the playground's not being used, and we don't understand why, and if that's a a concern regarding COVID. Of course, we'd like the playground to be used, and since community playgrounds are open, and since it's our understanding, despite that we're very conservative about these things, it's our understanding that outdoor transmission is extraordinarily rare. Transmission from surfaces is extraordinarily rare. Brookside has a wonderful playground, and I hope that our daughter's able to use it, and that she's not, that we can understand the rationale. So thank you again.
Thank you. All right, Jillian Borden, you're on mute.
Hi, thank you. I want to echo a lot of what a lot of other people have said, which is thank you so much for all of the work that you're putting into making this year possible for our kids. It was good to learn more about why the transportation changed the way it did this year. That helped put a lot of color to what we've been dealing with personally. So I feel the same way that a lot of other parents do. I'm not happy with how the busing is going for my kids, but on the subject of equity, my safety concerns are not as bad as some of the other safety concerns that were brought up. I would not begrudge another child having a change in their busing because a special consideration was made for them that wasn't made for my kids. So I just want to put that out there that I think most parents would feel the same way. It's okay if I don't get something that someone else gets because it's still better for the community. The subject of community stops in general being something that the community has input on, I think is an important consideration. And I hope that it's an ongoing discussion. It's not a final plan that we have to try to fight against, that it's something that we can all work together on. So I think everybody said pretty much everything I wanted to say on that already. And I just want to add that I also have a Brookside child, and yeah, he's coming home barely having a sip of water as far as the mask breaks are concerned, barely eating anything during the day. So I hope that we're really taking a close look at how we can find better outside time, better recess time, and better break time for those kids in general. And I'm also pretty conservative when it comes to masking, and I want them to be in masks all day, but he's not getting enough mask break right now. He's not getting enough outside time, and I hope that we can find a way to make that a little bit better. But thank you all for working towards making it all better.
Thank you. All right, I think that's all of our online participants. Anyone else in our audience here?
President Gala, can we have a discussion on a few of those things? that
Yeah,
you
yeah,
came
we'll
up
come
with?
back. Yep.
Is now the appropriate time?
But just to make sure we have no one else. I think we're good on our audience. Richard, Dr. Sanchez, you want to apply any, or you want to, should we get more questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
So just a couple of points that were brought up. I heard children not having enough time to eat. I would like us to look into that, perhaps expanding lunch, and even if that means, eating for, 15 minutes, putting a mask on for a few minutes for a break, and then is it possible to then take it off for a few more minutes to finish their meal? If you're hungry, you're not going to pay attention in school. I know that for a fact. So I think it's important to make sure the kids are nourished. 2, outside time is so important. 20 minutes a day of sun in October is enough vitamin D to last through the whole winter, which is pertinent to fighting depression, as well as for mental health. So if we could look at, while we have the weather on our side, expanding recess and outdoor time, even if it means, doing some classes outdoors. We have so much green space on this campus at Brookside. Is that something we could look into? When the teacher is reading a book to the children, can that be done outside? Another thing I'm concerned about is the eating on the floor protocols. I know the first thing I do when I sit on the floor is I touch the floor with my hands. Is anybody going around giving out hand sanitizer to the children after they touch the floor before they then touch their food. So is that something else we could look into? Maybe even utilizing the cafeteria in shifts, distanced, and having more time for lunch and having, restructuring so the kids are coming in at different times. Perhaps this is more sanitary than going, touching a floor, turning, touching your food. So those are just a few suggestions I had, and I welcome comment and discussion.
Vice Chair.
So I really think that this does warrant some further discussion as far as the safety of the kids on the bus. And the safety of the kids that are at the bus stop. This is, I get that there's efficiency. I really get that there's, good on the efficiency part, but I think the safety part must be first and foremost. Finding those right places and the spaces for those kids to be there, just so that there's no possible accident or anything waiting to happen. This is our kid. I don't want to have ever during my term here as a board trustee ever hear any one child being struck by a vehicle or be in an accident on their way to school or coming back from school. So I think this is really important, and that's something we need to address quickly.
All right, I need to say something. So once again, when I hear issues of safety, it's presumed through the statements, at least I'm inferring it, that our focus is not on the health and safety of our students. That's just how I'm perceiving it, and I need to share that out loud to the Board of Education, to our community. Safety of all students is paramount. Today, in fact, we put out a Connect Ed so that we can work together as a community related to an issue that presented itself, so that we can work together on behalf of all our students that involve one of our children, but making sure that the safety of all our students is paramount. It's not something the district has to do, but we feel very important that that is at the forefront of all our work. So when we're talking about our transportation not being safe, I have to say that in many ways, I don't think that's a fair portrayal of our work and the work that Mr. Minahan puts into it. And I don't want to make it personal about him, but our overall transportation department. We're talking about some sites that we need to look at very carefully, but we're also not talking about just generally how things are flowing and the safety that is put into account for all of our students, both from the perspective of COVID, but also from the driving and everything else that's taking place. So this is not personal to the board members or to our community, but generally speaking, I do want to make sure that we are very, very clear and understand that we agree that safety of our students is paramount. We may not necessarily agree on the spot. We may not agree on certain aspects, and we need to dialogue about that. But the other side to it is that is our focus. We are putting in security entrances at our schools. We're putting all these things, and I can go on and on about just safety measures as a whole, in addition to our transportation. So it's important to us. And we've taken time over the summer around the school year opening. All those are very important and safety measures that we've put in place on behalf of our students. What I appreciate here is there's dialogue and there's discussion. And I appreciate those that have taken the time to engage in that. Where we don't have healthy conversations is where we use social media to have conversations. And even as early as today, I heard someone call Channel 12 on behalf of the district because of our lunch procedures. I've received one phone call from a parent regarding the lunch procedures, and I completely understand. And one, I had to outreach to a parent regarding a matter. I personally reached out to the individual. So I'm asking our parents to please call. Resolutions do not happen via social media, and the press doesn't help us at all and doesn't give us the opportunity to try to resolve an issue that we agree we want to work in concert. We want to work in partnership with everybody. It's day 6 of school. And if there are procedures that we need to improve on, we appreciate the feedback. We're not here saying we're drawing the line and it's not going to happen. We are here to work in partnership. We've done and we've adjusted throughout the years. We have educators here that work side by side with us and making those decisions as well. So I just want to stress before that the respectful dialogue is really, really important for us. And also that our staff is working on it endlessly to make sure things are safe. And if there are elements where you can find a crack in a statement that I make, then let's dialogue about it and let's make sure that we can clarify. If a child's not having a mask break during the course of a day because I've made a statement that that's instituted, then let's dialogue. And let's have those conversations. Let's see why that's not happening. And I will look into it with you and work in partnership with our entire staff. But presuming that we're just ignoring it and turning our back on it, that's how I'm receiving it as a superintendent of schools. So I need to make those statements to our community and understand that I'm going to work diligently with you, on behalf of our students, with an entire excellent team behind us or alongside with me. But I'm hearing things about us not wanting to, that we're not trying to be safe. We're not considering the protocols. Yes, I'm gonna say it out loud. We're gonna follow CDC guidelines as long as they're telling me, or New York State Department of Health guidelines, not CDC, but New York State Department and then Westchester County Department. And I have pushed back, as some of you know, on some of the protocols that don't make sense to us right now. I'm gonna say it again. If we don't have our protocols, we would have had approximately 150 students quarantined as of today. Day 6 of school. Day 6 of school, missing 10 days of education. I need to put that in perspective for us. The system is not perfect, but we're all working to maintain the quality of education that we all want. 10 days of missing is not just for the child, it also impacts our families. We recognize it. I've personally had my child quarantined, and it's disruptive. It is disruptive for everybody. And we're working diligently to ensure that our kids can stay in school. The lunch we will look at. I've shared it with people here and present that we would look at it. I've had less than 48 hours to look at it. Today, we put photos of our kids outside, and all we heard was comments of the negative and folks making comments about kids wearing masks. The joy that kids are at least having is generally taken away. And today I was told that we're censoring folks because for some reason the photo came down. This is the environment that we're creating amongst each other. We just want to be respectful and professional with each other. That's all.
This is not going to be nearly as eloquent as I would like and appreciative. I just have to say that I'm incredibly appreciative of you. And I know it's not just you. There's a whole team of every employee in the district that has worked all summer and worked as we started the district and really been working for a year and a half on this. And I think, I don't know if it's people expect perfection because of whatever. I just think, there's so much good that the teachers are doing, the custodians are doing, every employee that we have is doing has their heart in the right place. And it's, the number of challenges we have are, enormous and changing every day. And I know we as a board aren't perfect, and we're trying to address them as best we can with the, what we can do. But I know that there's not a superintendent more open to feedback and communication. And I've seen it for however number, 8, 9 years, as of the rest of the board and staff. And, again, I don't want to make this just about you. It's really the whole district community that is putting behind. And I know how many supportive parents we have. And I know people will have feedback and should have feedback, and it's important because not everybody can be in every place, and not every decision will make it be perfect. And sometimes you make a decision and you just need feedback to say, hey, you're doing this. I'd like to have you look at it differently and rethink some things and give ideas. So again, I just want to say that to say thank you. I do think to a couple of people who spoke, I know, as a board member, I'm always happy when people attend board meetings and make comments, but we do have great principals in our buildings, and they're a great line of communication to talk with, and you may not always get the answers that you want, and things may change, and you may hear one thing and it's different from your kid, but they're in the details that sometimes we don't have at this level. So I would encourage people to not necessarily skip that step in their conversations, because there's a lot of good people working on this. And on the transportation, I know, there's, I think obviously some follow-up that the district will do, which I think happens every year in terms of looking at stops, and been around long enough to know I've seen stops be changed, and those conversations happen. But there is also that state appeal process that is there for there for a purpose that people should feel free to use, and that's why it's there. So.
Can I just
Mhm.
challenge our community from the following perspective, and for however it's taken? Today, we had a call for Channel 12 News for our lunch procedures. I hope we take as much effort to call Channel 12 News when there's positives that are happening within our community, and there are many. I'm not saying it's you.
Please, no, please. No. Please. All right, public comment is over. All right, thank you. Thank you. No, public is coming over. Thank you. 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 Lauren. Lauren, thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. Please, yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. All right, anything else? Move on to our resolutions.
Executive session to discuss a safety matter. I'll put a
Need a
motion on the
second.
floor.
You can make it, I guess somebody else. Or
So moved.
second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You'll just see that afterward, when most of you can cut that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, for now.
Bradley and Ellie, you're good to go? All right, we can get going while people log back into Zoom. We have your audio. All right, so we'll move into 4, business of the board. Take a motion for resolution 4.1 through 4.3. 4.1, resolution to appoint additional consultants for the 2021-22 school year. 4.2, resolution to approve an agreement with Iona College. 4.3, resolution authorizing the settlement agreement. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention. Oh, all right. Take a motion for 5.1 through 5.4. 5.1, resolution regarding Century refund payment, 91 Enterprise Corp. 5.2, resolution to accept funds over driver education program. 5.3, resolution regarding acceptance of funds from the Lower Hudson Council of School Personnel Administrators. 5.4, resolution regarding agreement between the Austin Union Free School District and First Presbyterian Church of Austin for the district's First Steps program. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions. I'll take a resolution for 6.2 through 6.13. 6.2, resolution regarding civil service staff rescinds. Resolution 6.3, resolution regarding support staff rescinds. 6.4, resolution regarding bus attendant resignations. 6.5, resolution regarding professional staff appointments. 6.6, resolution regarding civil service staff appointments. 6.7, resolution regarding support staff appointments. 6.8, resolution regarding support staff resignations. 6.9, resolution regarding bus attendant appointments. 6.10, resolution regarding professional staff appointments before and after school programs. 6.11, resolution regarding per diem substitute removals. 6.12, resolution regarding per diem substitute appointments. 6.13, resolution regarding approval of school volunteers. Any discussion? Just think under volunteers, we have student teachers and we'll help with our cross-country team. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions. All right, take a motion for 7.1. 7.1, resolution to adopt policy 9110.2, policy against discrimination and harassment as a first reading. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention. All right, we have an audience recognition for items not on our agenda. Quick look to see if anyone has their digital hands raised. We'll go relatively quick. No digital hands raised. All right. 9.1, board discussion and dialogue. I believe I just had 2 items. One, just as an FYI, not necessarily a discussion, but since our last meeting, the state did announce that the remote option is eligible for meetings of the board through early January. So Dr. Sanchez and I talked about it very briefly and aren't sure exactly what we'd recommend in terms of use. We could monitor it. I think we had, maybe an opportunity when we have, particularly short meeting, like one of our last meetings, to use, at the moment, it's not necessarily COVID related of not being together, but more the convenience of the format. So that's available. I think it comes with some criteria. I believe you need to be able to transcribe the meeting, make it available. So we'll have to make sure we're ready to go. Mr. Spring?
This one? I was just gonna suggest, if it's a short meeting, personally, I'd rather be in person, but if it's a longer meeting, I think, out of respect for the cabinet too, with the, who have a longer distances to drive, that if it's a longer meeting, perhaps we should, do Zoom. So maybe we can kind of scope it out, but I personally do like the in-person.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the trade-off of figuring out where the balance, you know, what's appropriate and what the balance is, and both certainly have pros and cons. I know the town or village announced they're going back to virtual. One or the other, I don't remember which, not that that necessarily matters, but just want to bring it out that it's an option for consideration.
In addition to the, I think you said, like, as far as our, like, the travel times of people, is it also like, would it alleviate kind of like stress on the, like the prepper, like us being in the school, using the school space when we're already kind of have challenges in that area? Would that kind of alleviate it if we pursued some more virtual options when in that window that we have the opportunity to?
The quick answer to that is yes, it would. Tonight, I'm going to recommend we take it up at the next meeting.
Yeah,
In
just
more detail than tonight.
whatever people think about. And then we can see if a quick conversation on this is feasible, but and Dr. Sanchez, I'll introduce this and you can chime in, but one of our policies talks about a handout that's available at meetings, and looking at it, we need something that fits that criteria. And Dr. Sanchez put together a document that isn't designed to be the all-encompassing, includes everything policy. It was just an attempt to get something that was reflective of, if you look at our policy manual, you know, the public comment is covered in a couple different areas. It was an attempt to create a document that reflects essentially the way we're operating meetings, but puts it in one place that can be used as a handout, while at the same time, and there's really, I guess, really an interim step, so that as we as a board, we haven't talked about it much, but we talked briefly in the policy committee meeting this week, looks at, which NISBA had on the recommended list of policies for us to review, our public comment policy. So probably through the policy committee, we can prioritize that higher on the list and look at rethinking the broader all-encompassing policy. This document was intended to be literally just that summary that is available to the public for now, you know, whether it's for the next month or two till we get something, you know, more permanent. But it wasn't an attempt to get into a detailed discussion about including everything. And so I think that's really the question is there consensus that it's reflective enough of our policy that we could use it for now or not? And if, I think, you know. Neither. Well, sorry. The one that Dr. Sanchez said, that's guidelines for public engagement, that's attached to this.
Okay.
I'm going to recommend that we look at those two and perhaps revise what we have at this point. You know, I think it's a decision we can make, you know. I think it needs to be a little more comprehensive than what's there right now. And I think some of the things that NISBA had was good. So I think we should work on it quickly. And, you know, this is not a policy, this is a board practice. And so we can, you know, before the next meeting, we could have a copy go around. And if there's consensus around it, then we could move forward in that meeting with it. But I do think some of NISBA's recommendations tonight would be good to include in that statement. And I think we should read it before the public comment period.
Say that last part again.
And we should read it before the public comment period.
Right. And you're right. And if you look at boards, they do it a couple different ways. One is make it very clear on their website. When you look up the meeting, it's also there. Whether we read the whole thing or not, it's clear it's there. it's in the back, it's other places, but.
Yeah, I think in the short term, it's something we should read at the beginning, for this, as we kind of get into a better group with it, then we can, I would say then you're probably right. But I think for now we should, I mean, that's just my opinion on it. I think I would circulate the comments that you had from NISBA tonight and
Okay. Oh, so you're-
in the draft that we're
Okay.
looking at.
Got it.
And then basically probably come up with a revised copy that has elements of both, all of it, and then try and see if we can get something in place by the next meeting.
Okay, glad you covered, because there's really two NISBA documents. One is the one I got today at that meeting, and then there's also their sample policy for public comment, which I believe Ray or I sent out their comment, but
I
I
think
see what you're saying.
I think they've matured their documentation based on the climate. And I
Understood.
think- And I think there's probably some value
Yep.
to being explicit right now with what's acceptable.
Yep, no, it was a nicely done document. So, any other comments on that? Does that, people generally agree with that? Revision for
Agree.
next meeting, and we're good? All right. Any other board dialogue?
No.
No. All right, I think I'm taking a motion, go into executive session.
So moved.
On favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention.